Letitia James did not pause because she was moved. She paused because something felt off. No media around, no podium, no campaign staff trailing behind. Just her in heels, on a crowded sidewalk, scanning the city like a prosecutor looking for inconsistencies. That was her nature. She didn't do sympathy strolls, but something about that makeshift art stand stopped her cold. A handwritten sign, barely legible in red ink. Original art. Funding cancer treatment. The canvases were real, layered, textured, desperate, but it was the girl behind them that made Letitia look twice. Pale, thin, hair cropped short, not shaved like a rebellion, but cut by necessity. No smile, no pitch, just silent persistence. Letitia didn't smile either. She folded her arms and stared, head tilted slightly like she was reading a deposition. And that girl, barely old enough to pay taxes, lifted her eyes and flinched. Not because she recognized the Attorney General of New York, but because she knew what that stance meant. Judgment. Not pity. Not praise. Just a woman trying to decide if she believed what she saw. But the truth had already started days before, in a hospital room that reeked of antiseptic and quiet resignation. "The treatment is working," the doctor had said, adjusting his tie like it would shield him from what came next. "But your insurance won't cover the next phase." The mother barely exhaled. The father said nothing. The bills had already hollowed them out. The ride home was silent. No radio, no conversation, just clenched jaws and fake reassurances. That night, the girl stared at the ceiling, fists balled at her sides. She wasn't scared of dying. She was scared of watching her parents go bankrupt trying to keep her alive. So she painted. She painted until her knuckles stiffened, until her fingers blistered, until color became currency. Her mother helped her carry the canvases downtown, but the girl set them up herself. Row by row, her soul laid bare for pedestrians who barely noticed. Some passed with a glance. Others didn't even slow down. A man in a business suit squinted at her sign, then shook his head like he was passing a scam. A woman in heels admired a canvas, hesitated, then walked away without a word. The girl took a breath. Then another. The heat soaked into her back. Her hands trembled from more than exhaustion, but she stayed. And then, a crack in the pattern. An older couple paused. The wife touched a canvas, desert sky, gold streaks, painted with fevered hope. "How much for this one?" the girl asked, quiet. "$80. The man nodded. "We'll take it." She didn't cry. Not in front of them. But inside she felt the ground shift, not from charity, from transaction, a sale, a step forward. And just a few feet away, Letitia James, arms still folded, eyes narrowed, said nothing. But she didn't walk away. Not yet. The couple's footsteps had barely faded when the first crack of dignity surfaced. The girl stared at the $80 bill like it was the Magna Carta. Her fingers hesitated, as if they might betray her by trembling, but they didn't. She folded the cash with a care reserved for sacred things and slid it into a zippered pouch like it was a state secret. One painting down, and a sliver of hope clung to her bones like dry paint. Letitia James watched from the edge of the current, arms still crossed, brow arched, not in sentiment but in calculation. That was the thing about Letitia. She never moved on emotion alone. She moved on evidence. And what she saw wasn't charity or coincidence. It was desperation, meeting the indifference of a city that calls itself progressive while stepping over cancer patients to catch a brunch reservation. By noon, the street was in full performance mode. Saxophone players wailed into the heat like unpaid interns auditioning for relevance. Tourists snapped selfies with graffiti they didn't understand, and Wall Street types, AirPods wedged in like state-sanctioned blinders, walked past without even pretending to care. The girl sat there, motionless, watching this parade of self-importance flow past her booth as if her sign had been written in invisible ink. Original art, funding cancer treatment, a straightforward message, too straightforward, perhaps, for a society trained to respond only to hashtags and tragedy with filters. And then came the pity brigade, like clockwork. A woman in a floral dress that screamed lives vicariously through other people's trauma leaned in, hand on heart, and sighed like she was auditioning for a commercial. "Oh, honey," she crooned, "you must be so brave." That word again. Brave. The consolation prize they give you when they have no intention of actually helping. The girl managed a polite nod, the kind trained into people who know better than to bite the hand that isn't feeding them anyway. Letitia narrowed her eyes. She'd seen this scene before. The public, marveling at resilience while doing nothing to prevent the suffering that required it. But the real show was yet to come. Enter the sidewalk philosopher. Leather jacket, mirrored sunglasses, swaggering like he'd just discovered nihilism at a Joe Rogan meetup. He scanned the paintings with a grin that belonged in a tax audit. "Nobody buys real art anymore, kid," he scoffed, like he had just cracked the code to late-stage capitalism. "You should try TikTok commissions." The girl didn't flinch. Her fists tightened, her jaw locked, and with a voice carved from all the nights she had cried alone without making a sound, she said, "I don't need your advice. I just need to fight." Letitia didn't blink, but her lips pressed into a line. Not bad. The girl had spine, and grit, and something else. Something Washington never understood. Dignity without press coverage. The sun dipped lower. Day 4. The girl's body was folding in on itself, worn from the metal stool and the chemo still haunting her blood. 3 paintings sold. Not even close. The math didn't care about sentiment. And just as the scale tipped toward despair, Salvation walked up wearing a press badge and ponytail. A journalist. Not the CNN variety who only shows up when there's a riot, but the kind still chasing stories before they're viral. She smiled, asked questions, took pictures. But what mattered most was what she didn't do. She didn't offer pity. She offered platform. And when she asked, "What's your story?" the girl answered, not with tears, but with facts. Letitia turned her head just slightly, watching the girl speak, and for the first time in the day, her arms unfolded. Because the question now wasn't whether this city deserved the girl. The question was, what would they do when the world finally heard her name? The journalist didn't make a scene. No grand declarations, no hashtags, no faux teary send-offs. Just a quiet nod and 5 clipped words that somehow felt heavier than applause. "People should hear this. I'll make sure they do." The girl didn't flinch. She'd heard promises before. From doctors, from non-profits, from distant relatives who sent prayers instead of checks. Promises in America came free. Chemo didn't. But the next morning, the sidewalk told a different story. People were stopping. Not out of pity this time, but with intent. 2 paintings gone before noon. A young couple debated like they were at Christie's auction house. And for once, it wasn't the sign that caught their eyes. It was the art. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Lucas, her best friend. "Dude, you're on the internet." She clicked the link and there it was. Her name in bold, her story laid bare for the world to scroll. Fighting for art, fighting for life, The teen who's painting her way to Chemo. Thousands of shares, comments like confetti, offers, messages, a flood of digital humanity that, just yesterday, had walked right past her. But not all power wears a badge, and not all miracles come with filters, because while the blog gave her visibility, what came next was something else entirely. The city kept moving, fast, loud, indifferent. Tourists posed, phones rang, suits checked watches. But amid the chaos, something shifted. A hush that didn't belong here. The kind of stillness that made even traffic feel like background noise. She felt it before she saw her. Letitia James, standing just outside the halo of the booth, hands in the pockets of her sharp-cut blazer, expression unreadable. She wasn't scrolling, wasn't speaking, she was watching. The girl asked automatically, "See anything you like?" Her voice was strained, thin from heat and fatigue. Letitia didn't smirk. She assessed. Like the room was a courtroom, and this was cross-examination in plainclothes. "Depends," she said, her tone low and perfectly measured. "What's the story behind these?" Now, that wasn't a casual question. That was a loaded one. And the girl knew it. Most people asked about the price. Letitia James asked like she was testing the truth, so the girl answered, softly but without apology. "I paint because it's the only thing I can control right now." She explained the chemo, the cost, the fear she refused to admit out loud. She spoke like someone who had been forced to grow up faster than legislation moves through Congress. Letitia didn't offer condolences. No hand on the shoulder. No thoughts and prayers template. She just listened. And when the girl finished, Letitia stepped forward and lifted a black and white canvas from the table. The one the girl had painted under morphine haze and midnight resolve. A desert, a lone cowboy, shadows long and defiant. Letitia studied it in silence, then nodded once. "I'll take this one." 200, the girl said, too exhausted to second guess. But Letitia wasn't reaching for a wallet. No cash, no tap to pay. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a checkbook. An actual checkbook. The kind used by lawyers, mayors, and people who still understood the gravity of writing something in ink. She wrote slowly, carefully, deliberately. Then tore the paper free and handed it over. And when the girl looked down at the number, really looked, the sidewalk seemed to tilt. Because it didn't say $200. It said $50,000. And Letitia? She was already watching her reaction like a DA waiting for the jury to realize what just happened. She took the check like it was radioactive. Her fingers barely touched the paper, like it might disappear if she pressed too hard. At first, she read it wrong. She had to. It couldn't say what she thought it said. But it did. Not $200. Not $1,000. Not a hopeful four-figure blessing. $50,000. Written in steady, deliberate cursive, under the name of a woman who had prosecuted Wall Street frauds and smiled doing it. Her breath snagged in her throat. The heat warped around her like a bad dream. The traffic blurred. Pedestrians melted into background noise. And standing across from her, in a crisp navy suit and not a single trace of indecision, was Letitia James. "This," the girl stammered, eyes still locked on the number like it had to be a typo. "This can't be right." Letitia didn't flinch. She tilted her head, like a judge waiting for a defense attorney to finish digging their own grave. "Oh, it's right," she said. "It's not charity. It's a transaction. You have talent. I have resources. And apparently, the city has no shame." The girl's hands trembled harder. "But I can't." Letitia held up one manicured finger. not in warning, but in finality. Don't turn this into a pity contest. This is merit. Your work spoke. I listened. Now take the damn check and keep going. That was Letitia James in her purest form, weaponizing justice, one signature at a time. And the crowd, which up until this moment had been too busy pretending not to see the girl dying on a street corner, suddenly found its attention span. First, a murmur, then a flicker of motion. A teenager with wireless earbuds stopped mid-step and squinted. Wait, is that... His voice rose an octave. A tourist turned. Another woman gasped, clutching her phone like it had just vibrated into relevance. And then it spread. The recognition. Not of the girl, not yet, but of the woman who had just handed her a lifeline on live asphalt. "That's Letitia James," someone hissed, incredulous. "The Attorney General? Is she buying art?" Within seconds, the sidewalk turned into a press conference without microphones. Phones raised, mouths open, eyes wide. People weren't whispering anymore. They were documenting, posting, tagging. Some still didn't understand what they were witnessing, but they understood enough to stop walking. Because whatever this was, it wasn't ordinary. And the girl? She stood there, still holding the check like it was her last anchor to gravity, as the tide of attention rose around her. Letitia hadn't moved. She wasn't smiling. She didn't need to. Power didn't announce itself. It signed checks. And the craziest part? The city still hadn't realized what it had nearly ignored. Because this moment, this absurd electric collision of survival and influence, wasn't the end. It was the breach point. The moment just before everything broke loose. Oh my God, it's really her. That's Letitia James, right there on the sidewalk. Wait, did she just buy that painting? Phones shot up like subpoenas at a congressional hearing. A herd of college students trampled each other's flip-flops as they scrambled closer, their disbelief pinging off the concrete. A businesswoman in stilettos nearly face-planted while dragging her assistant back toward the booth she had arrogantly walked past 10 minutes earlier. And then came the tipping point. A man in a suit, standard issue, high-performance ignorance, who had snubbed the booth earlier with all the grace of a hedge fund algorithm, turned on his heels and shoved his way forward. "What's happening?" he barked. He looked at the girl, then at Letitia, then at the trembling check in the girl's hand. And when he saw the number, his jaw dropped like a malfunctioning IPO. "Wait, she just bought a painting?" another woman shrieked. "For $50,000? And that was it. The crowd detonated. They came in swarms. Tourists, tech bros, unpaid interns, yoga moms, each with a phone, a wallet, or a self-righteous need to be part of a moment they hadn't earned. A man in a blue polo lunged like it was Black Friday at Best Buy. "I'll take this one," he shouted, grabbing a cityscape without blinking. Before the girl could even bag it, another hand shot in. "How much for this?" asked a woman, flipping through canvases like they were clearance bins. No one haggled. No one asked for context. Suddenly, art mattered, but only because power had first noticed it. A teenage girl pulled at her mother's sleeve, eyes wide with capitalist urgency. "I need cash. Now I want one before they're gone." And through it all, Letitia James stood calmly, hands behind her back, watching the circus unfold. She leaned in, just close enough for the girl to hear, and delivered the line like a cross-examination. "Told you. Keep painting." Then she turned and walked off. No applause, no explanation, no press release. By the time the girl got home that night, her phone was melting, notifications stacked like lawsuits. At first, She thought something had gone wrong. Then she saw the headlines. Letitia James drops $50,000 on street art. You won't believe what happens next. NY Attorney General turns teen cancer patient into national sensation. This art stand just became ground zero for a new kind of justice. Her photo was everywhere. Her, stunned, with the painting in one hand and the check in the other. Clips of the exchange had over 3 million views, and the DMs came like flood warnings. Hi, do you ship to Texas? My daughter's battling cancer, too. Your story made us cry. Can we commission something? I don't care what it costs. I want to help. She scrolled, breath shallow. Dozens of messages turned into hundreds, then thousands. Orders, donations, media inquiries, each one proof that someone, somewhere, had finally decided to see her. And then, an email that froze her thumb mid-scroll. Subject, Gallery Inquiry. She clicked. A gallery owner in Manhattan. Real credentials, real space. We'd love to showcase your work in our next exhibition. Let's talk. She dropped the phone and pressed her palm to her chest, heart hammering like a verdict being read. She wasn't just selling paintings anymore. She had become the canvas, the symbol. And a month later, when she walked into the hospital for her final round of treatment, the bill was paid in full. Not by a charity, not by a GoFundMe, but by justice, dressed in heels with a pen that actually meant something. Every invoice, every deadline notice, every soul-splitting, number-stamped threat from the healthcare industrial complex. Gone. Not reduced, not postponed, but erased entirely. No appeals, no panels, no phone calls to customer service reps trained to say I'm sorry, like it's a product line. Gone. Because of one painting, one moment, and one woman who stopped, listened, and decided the system's failure didn't have to be the final word. Letitia James had not waltzed in to play fairy godmother. She had bought that canvas like it was evidence, and ruled on it accordingly. The girl, still weak from her final round of chemo, didn't need a parade. What she needed, what she finally had, was breathing room. A future that didn't start with a payment plan. The hospital lights still flickered, the chemo still burned. But this time it was different. She walked into the ward with her chin up, not because she felt strong, but because she no longer felt like a burden. Outside that room wasn't a question mark. It was a runway, a world of people waiting to hear from her, not about her. A week later, the letter came. Cream envelope. No return address. Just her name, handwritten in penmanship that didn't care about presentation, only sincerity. She opened it like it might vanish in sunlight, and inside was a short note, scrawled in blue ink. Your fight reminded me that some stories still matter. Don't stop telling yours. Letitia. The words hit harder than any diagnosis. It wasn't encouragement. It wasn't a slogan. It was acknowledgement. From someone who had seen every trick in the book, who'd buried lies in courtrooms and carved truths into headlines. Letitia James didn't hand out sentiment. She handed out verdicts. The girl pressed the note to her chest like it was breath. Later that night, without fanfare, without a press release, she dipped her brush in a fresh well of paint. This time, the canvas didn't tremble. This time, the strokes were bolder, cleaner, no longer weighed down by fear. She wasn't painting to survive anymore. She was painting to speak. Her first official gallery exhibition was already set for next month. The gallery owner, who once turned down local submissions unless they came with Ivy League credentials, had now moved her work to the front window. Her inbox was a traffic jam of opportunity, interviews from national outlets, requests for custom work from cancer survivors, mothers, activists, collectors. People didn't just want her art, they wanted her voice. But even as the buzz built and the requests multiplied, one piece would never leave her possession. The black and white desert painting, the one that started it all, was not for sale. Not now. Not ever. Because that painting didn't just represent her struggle. It was the proof that someone saw it, valued it, and said, enough. And where did it end up? Not in a vault, not on auction, but mounted, carefully framed in Letitia James's private office. Right beside her Justice Department commendation and a weathered photograph of her first protest. When visitors asked about it, she simply said, "That one?" That's the only verdict I ever wrote with a brush. And as for the girl, she didn't become a viral sensation. She became a signal. That, for all the noise, for all the empty talk and polished speeches about hope, sometimes it takes one decisive act, one serious check, one political powerhouse willing to break character and say, this child matters. This story matters. And the strangest thing? This wasn't even the most shocking headline that month, but it was the only one that made people stop scrolling and start remembering what justice is supposed to look like.